What's up everybody, my name is Bennett and welcome to the Lethal Games channel. Today I'll be counting down my top 5 favorite games of all time, and I'm fully aware that these lists vary greatly and can be hotly debated. You can argue that maybe some of these games shouldn't be on the list, and certainly there are others that likely should be, but this is my list and subjective to my personal experiences. So feel free to let me know in the comments down below what your favorite games are. But without further ado, I give you my top 5 favorite games of all time. First on the list is Pokemon Red and Blue. This is the game that began a franchise that is beloved around the world. Spanning over 2 decades, it is the second best-selling video game franchise in history and the highest grossing media franchise of all time. I'm sure a lot of you grew up either playing Pokemon games or watching the show, and Pokemon Red and Blue is where it all started. It was my first video game and I spent countless hours on it. It gave me my first RPG experience and a sense of progression that I've never felt before as a child. Maybe this is the game that gave me my love of RPGs, but what I do know for sure is that the core Pokemon formula created in the first generation of games has remained unchanged in the 20 years that followed. It has stood the test of time and remains as popular as ever. I've played every generation of Pokemon games since then, and though none really compares to the original, I am beyond excited that Nintendo has confirmed a new Pokemon RPG coming to the Nintendo Switch. It will be the first time a main series game will be on the home console, and I would not be surprised to see some drastic changes and updates to the game. I'm sure nostalgia plays a huge factor, but there's no doubt in my mind that Pokemon Red and Blue deserve a spot on this list. Coming in at number 4 and following the nostalgia train is Warcraft 3. Warcraft 3 was my first PC game and it taught me what addiction truly meant. I fell in love with the deep lore of the Warcraft world, so much so that to this day I still follow the storyline of Warcraft even though I don't play the MMORPG. Warcraft was a strategic and competitive game and gave me my first true taste of online competitive play. But aside from climbing the ladder, Warcraft brought to the world a modding scene unlike any other before it. Custom games in Warcraft 3 no doubt stole thousands of hours from people's lives, and it certainly did from me. From tower defense games to Footman Frenzy to the birth of the MOBA genre, Warcraft 3 had it all. But beyond all that, I personally loved the single player campaign, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that I used to play the entirety of the campaign every single summer. Blizzard has recently begun patching the game again 15 years after its release, and rumor has it that Blizzard is planning an HD remaster of Warcraft 3 similar to what they did with original StarCraft last year. Based on the timing, it's extremely likely that Blizzard will make an announcement this fall at BlizzCon, and if that's the case, it's an instant buy from me. Holding down the number 3 spot is Dragon Age Origins, and to me, this is the quintessential RPG. If the essence of an RPG lies in its namesake, then Origin does it better than anyone else. It created a gaming universe that is so deep in lore and conflict, but fills it with characters that portray the story of the world masterfully. It is not uncommon for you to feel empathy and connect with characters in the game, but one of the most groundbreaking aspects of the game was how your choices impacted the story. It certainly wasn't the first game to do so, but it definitely revolutionized it. Your decisions aren't simply just forks in the story. It resulted in intricate and complex interactions and provided storylines that you may not otherwise experience. Not to mention, it also tied so well into the relationship system with your companions. It always made you think twice before committing to a decision, and you often had to weigh your own morality against the differing opinions of your fellow travelers. This did wonders for enhancing the aspect of roleplay. For these reasons and more, Dragon Age Origins has an insane level of replayability even without the Awakening expansion. Origins began the Dragon Age franchise, and though the subsequent games never quite match Origins' caliber, I'm excited for the next title that's already in development. We continue the onslaught of RPG games in this list with none other than Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. It is the best-selling Legend of Zelda title of all time if you exclude remakes. It holds the record for the most perfect scores on Metacritic. It literally sold consoles for Nintendo during the first couple of months of launch with a 100% attach rate. This meant that for every Nintendo Switch console sold, there was also a copy of Breath of the Wild sold. But it gets crazier because during the first month of launch, over 3.8 million copies of the game was sold worldwide, and only 2.7 million Switch consoles were sold. People were buying the game before they even had the console to play it. But accolades aside, Breath of the Wild is deserving of its praise. It is the perfect fusion of the past and the future. Nintendo has managed to maintain the Legend of Zelda identity, the feeling of the classic games, while simultaneously changing the very fundamentals that every predecessor has had before it. The open world is absolutely gorgeous and a joy to explore. you will simply get lost in discovery and be mesmerized by the landscape and scenery. And to aid in that discovery, you're given every tool right from the start, so there aren't any hard blockades on where to go or what you can do. It's simply your world to explore. But one of my favorite parts about the game is the fact that the possibilities are up for you to imagine. Because if you think you can do something in a certain way, chances are that you can. There's no one correct way of dispatching enemies, and for a lot of the little tricks, tips, and various tutorials, you'll have to mingle and talk with NPCs along the way to figure out how to do things. It really makes you feel like a kid again, exploring the lands, finding secrets, and solving puzzles. It's no doubt one of my favorite games of all time. If you couldn't tell already, I'm a pretty big RPG fan, and if you're an RPG fan, then it should come as no surprise that my favorite game of all time is The Witcher 3. As someone who's played the first two games and didn't really enjoy Assassins of Kings, I was quite cautious about Witcher 3, but did it ever blow me away? Hands down the most gorgeous open world game I've ever played, even more so than Breath of the Wild. It is the kind of game where the environment and lighting and scenery will stop you in your tracks just so you can admire it. The dynamic weather system adds so much to the world. You can hear the wind slowly pick up over time. Listen to the leaves rustle as the storm rolls in before the inevitable downpour begins. And the way your armor soaks the water and glistens in the light, graphically this game is an absolute masterpiece. The voice acting and the background chatter and the slang all create a living culture in the game that transports you into a living and breathing world. Beyond having so much to explore and discover, The Witcher 3 has the best side quests bar none. One minute you think you're going on a regular kill quest, and the next you're thrown into a murder mystery quest chain that will have you tracking clues, dodging red herrings, and bracing for plot twists. The game is filled with them, and there's never really a dull moment. You'll spend countless hours doing monster contracts that can be their own subplots themselves, and sometimes you'll end up realizing that perhaps the beasts that you're hired to kill aren't the real monsters in the story. And that's when you're presented with moral choices and decisions that will test your character. And when you're all done with the game, The Witcher 3 has some of the best expansions ever. Both Heart of Stone and Blood and Wine are absolutely fantastic storylines that will provide dozens of hours of quality content. Blood and Wine is especially good, so good that it could have literally been a game on its own, and it actually is better than a lot of full-fledged games out there right now. I could make an entire video about this game, but the point is, Witcher 3 is hands down my favorite game of all time. And that concludes my top 5 favorite games of all time. I would love to hear what your favorites are, either in the comments down below or on Twitter. The first half of the year hasn't been super exciting in terms of game releases. Things should pick up as E3 rolls around. I've got a few E3 prediction videos lined up, so get subscribed and don't miss out. That's it from me, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.